So the 6 teams tonight, is it the same 6 teams for the junior high meet in a
I
couple
need
weeks?
to know when the maintenance races. No, I will text you. The 4x5, yeah.
One substitute on track change.
They're all conference teams here tonight, right?
No. Did you hear anything about today? Why am I this long?
Looking into that sun. So I'm not looking into that sun.
That's right. Good.
So, Mr. Jagger's calling the letter for the district attorney.
Okay.
I do gotta look at the bald spot on my head. I don't know if I like that either.
My ear does.
When I look at it, see my bald spot, I'm not even right.
You wanna trade?
No. I'm trying to glare right up from the side view, so.
Start wearing a hat more
I'm
often.
gonna say, one ball.
How many trees in that one?
I had to ask Lily the other day if I could turn her in for bullying to Mr. Engelman, because she's letting me know quite frequently how fewer and fewer strands of hair I have now.
Is it done on school time? That's what I always tell my daughter, you know, she makes her frequent trip to my office daily, and I say, if you keep this up, I'm gonna turn you into Mr. England for bullying me.
Yep. I think my wife's actually the one that does it the most.
I would agree.
Yeah,
So you chose that one. You chose that
I
bald
did.
one.
I have nobody to blame but myself about that.
I say, she's just keeping you honest, right?
Yep.
If she's listening, I'm gonna get a text here.
Probably encouraging you to heckle me.
Uh-huh.
Oh, no. No,
Just do it.
whatever that one is.
Yeah.
Not there. Sure. Okay. Bipolar, is that just that? I mean, you ready? Mine was very sensitive about that. Okay.
You said it.
Sounds good. All right.
You need a,
I need my legs tightened,
I'm gonna say, you need some napkins or something to come underneath the
from the long way legs.
corner.
Clouds.
I will be okay, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
So they never did anything for you?
That's right, I won't, look at that.
7 o'clock, so we'll close the public hearing and call the regular meeting to order. If you could stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Wells, you have the roll.
I do, thank you.
All right. Item 2, let's take a look at the agenda here. Any changes other than the additional list of bills?
I don't have any.
there's no other changes from board members, I would take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. A motion and second to adopt the agenda with the additional changes noted. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Carried. Items B, C, and D, minutes of past meetings, financial report, summary list of bills plus additional.
I don't have anything to pinpoint unless there's specific questions, so please feel free to ask. As always.
I had a couple questions before the meeting that Jackie answered for me on some reimbursements for staff for their new positions and what that works. Or how that works, I should say, so.
And do we make them turn in tuition and or work receipts for those?
Okay, if there's no questions on those, I would entertain a motion to approve all three.
Make a motion to approve those three items.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the three items listed, plus the additional list of bills. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item 3, recognition. Congratulations to students, staff, and community. Mr. Jordan.
At your tables, I've placed a document for your review. I'd like to recognize 4 members of the 6th grade class for their participation and achievement in the 6th grade math bee. Adeline Harms, Logan Koob, Caleb Quaker, and Egan Peterson. They represented Central Lyon. They placed 8th out of 25 total teams. And we want to give special recognition to Egan and Caleb for their individual finishes, 8th place for Egan and 14th for Caleb. So thank you to Mr. Houston for his work with the 6th grade Math B team and for the students for their achievement. In addition, since we met last month, congratulations to Eliora Enriquez and Anna Van Artsen for being recognized for their performances for individual speech. They were both all-state recognition, so in order to do that, you have to be nominated by your judge for your superiority at the contest. And so all those from across the state are then compiled, and then only, I think it's less than 10% of all students that participate in those specific events are recognized as all-state. So congratulations to those 2 young ladies. In the middle, I want to thank Mrs. Van Wy for her work with the 8th grade students. Just last week, they finished up their biology presentations. As we all know, Ms. Van Wy is retiring at the end of this school year. And this project specifically is kind of the highlight of her program and the kids' culmination activity of all their tech skills, but also then their public speaking skills. And like I said there, you know, the vast majority of these presentations have to do with a family member, most oftentimes grandmas and grandpas. And this is an opportunity for kids to really get to know their grandparents maybe on a different level through the interview process. And we had 219 parents, grandparents, family members come in to see those presentations last week. And it's really the smiles and the hugs and, you know, the tears of appreciation that the kids will remember long after they presented. So we've got alumni that I've talked to that have said that that's been one of the most memorable experiences they've had is those 8th grade presentations. Anything you want to add there, Mr. Engelman?
No, it's a very powerful activity. It's nice to see people from outside even, you know, coming into the building, witnessing what the kids can do up there on stage. It's difficult for the kids, but it's a great skill to have and it's good practice. But I think the connection it makes between themselves and a grandparent, great-grandparent is very powerful. Definitely something we don't want to give up, and I don't even think we could give up with Sue's exit because it is so well thought of. by alumnus and those in the community, so I want to continue that. And Bruce's role in that as well, Bruce helps with that and the scoring and kind of getting kids prepared for that, so, yeah, it's a very fun project to watch, and it's nice to see the kids, some intrinsic motivation and rewards for those things, so.
So hats off to Mrs. Van
Yeah.
Wy and like Mr. England said, Mr. Eckenrod for his support of that over the course of the past 20 years as well. Community recognition, Amy Borman was in during the week of Iowa assessment testing to help nurse Brenda Van Huffwagen administer the CPR certification to our seniors. Amy's support is greatly appreciated and allowed us to get every one of those kids certified and check off that graduation requirement. So hats off to Amy and also Nurse Brenda. So principals, you got anybody else, board members, anybody else you'd like to recognize?
Thank you, and congratulations to those folks for sure. Communications, public participation on non-agenda items. I don't believe I saw anybody sign up to speak. Item B, any correspondence?
I don't have anything.
Okay, we'll move on to principal reports. Mr. Harmon, PBIS implementation.
Yes, my article this month, I wanted to give the board an update of where we're at. I gave just a brief history of the process that we started here at Central Lyon, actually 5 years ago. It's been 5 years since we started this process, and that's just staggering to believe that the Tier 1 team, and Mrs. Baker's one on there, that it's been 5 years working toward that goal. Currently, grades PK through 4 are in Tier 1 and Tier 2 implementation. I provided another MTSS model just so you remember how that works. The Tier 1 is geared toward 80% of those kids, that whole group or universal interaction. And then from there, we monitor majors and minors. A major, of course, comes to me through a referral, and a minor is just dealt with the teacher. How those are obtained: if a teacher does a reminder 3 times in the class period or in that time frame, that's when a minor is kicked in, so that we're receiving data from that teacher and for that student. Those are the 2 big things. From that behavior matrix, with this whole group of expectations, then we also have the small group, about 15%, that is involved in the check-in, check-out system. We're actually in year 2 of that implementation. Whether we work with small groups or individuals, those have to qualify with 4 or more referrals in a 3-week period, I believe, okay? And again, the biggest thing we do is we provide a mentor and more support. This isn't your behavior discipline model. This is more like we're giving kids something to strive for. So each period is then documented, happy face, smiley face, or say happy face, sad face, or no data at all. And then we monitor that like a 3-2-1 system as well. And we find the percentage every day that is sent home to the parents showing success of that student. Our success rate for Tier 2 is 80% of the day, and the biggest thing we want to know is if they don't get that 3 or that smiley face that period, that very next period they reset. You know, that doesn't drag on for more periods throughout the day. So we've seen some very high marks as the data I've shown at the bottom of the page. Currently, just some things that are very striking. A major, now this is across the nation with schools our size. Our Swiss data provides us with real-time data as it's entered. The average school has 0.6 referrals per month. We're currently at 0.25. The median score for minors is 0.8 referrals per day. Ours is 2.2 referrals per day, so we have some higher marks there, but they're not majors. The majors are when the principal has to get involved. And then, of course, you see they give, this whole process is supported through our AA, but also across the nation. Those data marks show a school areas to focus on. So an ODR is called an office discipline referral. Anytime a major or minor is recorded, you're on track if you're at 80% of your kids or more are not getting an ODR or 0 or 1 for the school year, and we're at 98.7%, so very high mark there. And you can see the percentages for 2 through 5 and 6 that we're way beyond the national mark. We want to keep those in mind as we're going forward. It does show us, well, the things that we got to work on is our tier 1 universal behavior matrix if needed. And again, it's showing us that we're ready for the next steps, which there's called SAGE groups or more support groups for kids that have been, we're seeing this year that if they get off the tier 2 that they are going back on, which some kids strive for that. And talking to other administrators, there's some kids that just want that interaction every day. And so that's something that you'll learn. And another thing is that getting into tier 3, that is the intensive individual instruction, what is called the Check and Connect system, and that is a 2-year program for that student to go through. So that's a very intense, again, data-driven program all the way through. So with the year that we had last year, it kind of put us on hold for moving forward. We want to make sure that you have a very stable tier 1, and that's where the middle school is we're establishing that tier 1, and sometimes it can take up to 3 years just to get that tier 1 established with your staff, because more than training the kids, you're training your adults to think in a different way. Most time it's action, consequence, move on. Well, we're trying to get rid of that consequential behavior because students will also thrive on wanting those, because again, it's just adult interaction. So that's the model that we've been working toward, and going forward, we want to continue to check our data, but also look at how we're doing across against schools across the nation, and making sure that our different approaches are working. So I just wanted to give you a report on that. Any questions? Self-explanatory? Okay. The only other thing I wanted to highlight was our conference data that we had from March. Currently, our overall attendance rate was 97% for the elementary. We had some lower scores in the 94s. Our lowest one was 90% in 4th and 5th grade, but we had a lot of 100%. So it shows that our online program for sign up for parents has really worked. And that saves, well, 4 hours of Wednesday that we used to get together as a staff and try to plan those schedules. That parents have adopted that, and again, parents are still striving to come in and hear how those kids are. And of course, with that small percentage that didn't show up, there are parents there we'd like to talk to, and again, we tried to reach out. If they did not show up at conferences, we tried to reschedule for several weeks, and then we just sent the information home, trying to get that parent to call you with a phone call or through the written correspondence to make sure they knew how things were going. So, again, a very successful spring conference for us.
One quick question back on the
Yep.
EBIS data. Item number 2 on the ODR.
Yes.
The goal should be 10 to 15%. Is that less than that's okay though?
Correct, yeah, so
Okay.
if you look at your student body, in that matrix, if you have 10 to 50% of your student body getting 2 to 5 ODRs per year, that's the national.
The median.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, and so we're at 0.97%, yep.
Okay.
Very good.
Any idea what the number was before we started the online signups? I know it was the time to do it for parents, but was it?
It was very similar, we haven't seen a drop off at all,
Okay. I was thinking, have you seen an increase or a change, or just, I'm fine with having less hours and less things to do to organize the schedule.
Right.
I'm for that.
Good question. I think the biggest thing when we maybe have less conflict with getting hold of some parents.
Sure,
When we sent home the sheet saying your conference is this time,
sure.
we always had parents not show up. I mean, that was the biggest thing. But by having them, we hope that by having them have a choice, that maybe some of them will choose to appear that maybe
Sure.
they wouldn't before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good question.
Anything else from Mr. Harmon? Okay, move on to Mr. Engelman with a report on the talented and gifted programming.
Yeah. So basically working with Brad, the 8 other members, or the 8 total members of our Talent and Gifted Committee that we established this year, we're working with roughly 80 to 90 students. I took roughly 85 students, grades 3 through 12, that are identified as talented and gifted here at Central Lyon. And kind of our goal this year is we've been kind of reflecting and reevaluating the program in its entirety, basically going back to our plan of action that we submit each year in the handbook. And we started from basic scratch, looking at a mission statement, philosophy statement, comparing that to other districts and kind of what their motto is versus ours. Everything's a little bit different, but we're trying to find something that works for us. And going through that, like I said, I hinted on a couple things that we've talked to. We try to meet at least twice a month. Some months it's a little bit better, some months it's hard to get everybody together. We're trying to meet at least 2 times a month to go over these different items here. So we talked about the induction process already, and what we're currently doing has been successful, but we're trying to find other ways to perhaps look at some student creativity, observations obviously, and kind of bringing things to the committee to evaluate TAG status, maybe just not the COGAT scores, which we've currently done. The exit process, we've had some students that have wanted to exit the program, but in putting more of those things into detail, kind of more of a formal process than just jump in, jump out sort of a thing. Programming has been our biggest thing we've talked about over the last couple sessions. Basically, you can see there, those are some highlights. First and second grade, Mr. Rabling's going in there and working with a whole group of students as frequently as he can. And then third and fourth grade is really after those students have been identified, working more as a whole group, but also some individual activities. I highlighted a few there. The things bolded there are kind of areas that we've added this year. 5th and 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade, and then high school, you see we're currently lacking in some programming that we need to identify. We need to keep those kids engaged via TAG and give them some options, because we currently don't have any. They used to be students that qualified for AP courses, and they were the only kids that would take AP. Now AP is offered to any student, basically. So that's not necessarily TAG anymore. So you can see a lot of things. What our primary focus is finding out what the students' interests are, making them have a little bit more skin in the game. Passion projects are kind of a big thing. We're looking at whether you do 2, 3, maybe 4 a year, something that's developmentally appropriate but yet challenging. Working with personalized education plans, if that's the route we're going to go, kind of like an IEP, but on the talented and gifted spectrum. We basically want the kids to, and we kind of did this the other day, we did a survey with the high school students. What are you looking for out of the TAG program? What interests you? What would you like to see more of, less of? What would have kept you maybe more engaged with TAG? What do you think some of your classmates would have appreciated who have dropped over the years? And they had some good feedback for us that we'll take back to the committee, but basically it's it's kind of a blank canvas at this point. We can do a lot of different things because we have a lot of things that are available to us. There's not one right or wrong model, I don't think, because everybody does it a little bit differently. What we continue to struggle with and question ourselves on, is it pull in, pull out? Is it an accelerated program? Is it how individual do we need to make it? How much choice do we need to give the students versus how much should be a little bit teacher instructor driven? So a few questions we're still mulling over and getting a lot of good input. The AEA has been helpful with providing Brad and the committee some support. The conferences, the national and the state conference and the associations are beneficial. So we're doing a lot of digging and reflecting and changing things up. So I think the kids, and we got the 3 audience members here, are also 3 members of the committee, and I don't want to speak for all of them, but I know in our meetings we talked about kids that are a little bit more excited, it seems, this year to go to TAG, from leaving the classroom going to TAG, because they're doing things maybe they're interested in. I know some students have done, one student in particular I got to see did a football helmet project. He researched how football helmets have evolved over the years, and that was something he wanted to do, and he got really into it. So we're exploring those avenues more so than kind of a whole group forceful curriculum. So go ahead and ask questions. Mr. Rabling's here as the TAG instructor. He's going to know more about it than I. But it is definitely, wheels are in motion as we're changing things up.
Jason, what would you say is, or have we defined, what is the overriding mission or goal of the TAG program?
I think the overriding mission is to provide a challenging yet unique experience for the students based on their unique needs. I think is kind of what we're trying to drive it towards. I think our model, like I said, has been more whole, more like forceful, maybe more that we pushed it from our end, and we kind of want the kids to have a little bit more stake in the game, so we're trying to develop activities, give them some choices, give them a menu of options where they can explore things that are of interest to them that go to the next level. Basically what they can't get in the gen ed classroom necessarily.
If we haven't already, if we're not going that direction, I encourage you to document those things,
Mm-hmm.
so that we know that we have, how will we know when we get there?
Yeah,
You know, that type of mentality.
Yep.
So, yeah, make sure we document it so that people even from the outside come in, or parents can say, well, why should I want my child to be in TAG?
mm-hmm.
Okay, here's our mission.
Yep.
This is our objective.
Yep, yep. And I think just a lot more transparency with the program. Bring people in from the onset, saying this is what our TAG program is, like you said, this is our mission statement, these are some things that they're gonna be asked to do. Instead of waiting down the road and then they're asked to do something maybe they didn't think was part of it or what they didn't sign up for, and then we have a jostle for whether or not we're gonna stay in it or not. So we kinda wanna be more upfront with people. This is what it's gonna look like, you're gonna have a say in it, we're gonna have a little say in it, but it's a partnership. And we want everyone to be on board, everyone know what they're getting into.
Are there any parameters, and maybe you all might be able to, like the passion projects, or are there any parameters that get set forth to that, or is it?
For the younger kids, it's usually pretty structured. We use defined learning, which was defined STEM in the past, so give them a few different to choose from, but as they get older, 7th and 8th grade, beginning of the semester, I'd meet with them, okay, kind of what is it you're thinking that what is an area of interest? What is something you want to learn about? Something you want to do? And then from there, we figure, okay, what is your product? After you're done with this, how are you going to show what it is that you have learned? So I guess with the parameter part of it is I work through with them, so some would just I want to do something very basic and
Sure.
put no work into it, but kind of work with them, okay, here, let's, do this part with it. Let's add this to it. Think of this as your product at the end. Who are we going to show this to?
Sure.
If that answers.
Yeah, something, I mean, it's just, I guess, I look at it and I think, wow, it's pretty broad, as far as that goes, but, so I would like some, and I'm sure that there is, I'm not saying there is, I'm just, if there's any sort of a guide that you're like, okay, well, we can't really focus on this type of thing, but we can use part of this. I mean, I could give examples, but it really wouldn't, I think you understand what I'm asking, I think, anyone.
And part of it is there's a wide range of
Sure.
projects that kids are doing. There's a couple that are doing more of like a historical research, and they're going to pretty much teach a lesson to, say, a younger class about what they'd learned. I have another student is doing a American Sign Language. They wanted to start learning American Sign Language. So there's a program they're working through to kind of an introduction to American Sign Language. So there's a wide range, so it's almost on a case-by-case
Sure.
basis. So as they get older, let them kind of decide what it is that they're interested in, and maybe they go down one route and realize this isn't something I want to do, and allow changes within that.
All right.
Brad, do we have defined learning objectives for each of the different programs in here? So, Jacob's Reading Ladder, I have no idea what that is. The objective for kids to participate in that is this.
Yes.
I'm not asking you to answer what the objective of that one
Okay.
is, but just in general, do we understand why we have these things included in the TAG program? What's the learning objective of each of those topics or subjects that's in the TAG program? For example, Jacob's Reading Ladder, chess strategies, creative writing, do we know why those things, those topics are included in the TAG program? And when the kids get done with it, what do they learn, or what have they learned, or what do we want them to have learned at least?
Have them written? I don't at this point. Just something I'm working on getting that, okay, we're doing this, this is the purpose for them,
Mhm.
but yeah, I guess I don't have them documented at this point, and it's something in the process of working on.
Okay, good. I think that would make sense to do.
Yeah.
Just so, if, for no other reason that a parent would say, well, why do we do this? Why do we do that? What's the objective of this program? And that may help us back to parents understanding the justification for their child to be in tag.
What's the purpose, what's the
Yeah.
meaning behind it?
Right. Right.
So, anything else from Mr. Engelman or any of the tag committee members?
And I can comment real quick on, like Steve said, with the conference percentages, ours was in the upper 90s again, anywhere from 96 to 97, it was in that ballpark. But one thing we tried differently this year was the student-led conferences. From the people that I've talked to, again, I didn't talk to everybody, but staff included thought they were very good. Again, the student themselves took a little bit more initiative, was a part of the conversation, where in the past they'd be sitting at home, but, you know, hoping they heard good news, and having the student, I said it on plenty of them, having the student voice what they've learned, what their goals are, where they maybe fell short, and taking responsibility for that, and having to express that to parents, I thought was very powerful as well. So, looking to continue that unless we hear otherwise from a large group of people, but I know our staff really liked it, and I think our kids, it was something new for the kids, and I think they'll grow accustomed to it too, and then learn to appreciate that part of it.
Was that 6, 7, 8? Or how high did that go?
I think it was 6, 7, 8, yep, sixth grade was included on that.
Fifth graders did it too. I know
Did they
Ben.
fifth grade?
Did they?
Yep.
Okay.
So Bennett did it and Lily. So I know it went down to at least fifth grade.
Okay, thank you for that. Mrs. Wells, anything?
I do not.
Okay. Board members, sharing committee update. Guys want to tackle that here or later on?
Later on.
We'll do it when we talk about sharing. Sounds good. Anything else, Dave? Anything, board member? Okay. Mr. Jorth?
Yes, in your packet, I provided you with a report regarding my conversation with Micah Fries at the development group. I know we've talked at the table a couple different times about either a joint meeting or a subcommittee of our board meeting with the city. And so I think we're at that point now where we'd like to maybe have 2 members from the board join Micah, a couple members from the city council, and probably Jordan Cordalls and Mayor Chase, and just have a conversation about future opportunities. I included the strategic framework that was put together a few years ago. It hasn't been revisited since 2019, and so that's a place to maybe start as a jumping off point. But this first meeting would be just kind of an opportunity to discuss what future meetings might look like and the goals of this joint partnership. So if there's any members of the board that would like to be a part of that, you know, right now we've got to limit it to 2 members so we don't have a public meeting. So if anybody's interested, let me know, and then I'll coordinate on our behalf with the city and Micah for a future meeting date.
I'd be interested in that.
Okay?
I'm local. I could jump in there too during the day.
Very good. Like I said, I'll get in contact with you guys for some dates in the next, I'd say, month to 6 weeks. And we'll try to coordinate with the city moving forward. So thank you. My next report is in regards to the health and safety protocols, in regards to our mask requirement and social distancing strategies. So in the packet, it's page 44. Kind of at the tail end of our negotiation session, we did have a conversation with the negotiations team just in regards to feedback about the mask requirement and social distance strategies. And so CLEA contacted their membership And, the majority of the teaching staff indicated their preference to end the mask requirement as soon as possible. And while I really do appreciate that feedback, as I continue to talk to our local healthcare professionals and partners, in conversations with Dave and Andy last Thursday, while we would like to relax that, because it is not normal for us to be wearing face coverings and staying 6 feet apart when at all times possible. The reality is COVID still exists in our community. And so we've got 6 weeks left until the end of the school year. And it's my recommendation to continue our mask requirement and social distancing strategies until the end of the school year. Not only to make sure that we can keep kids in person for the rest of the year, but also all those other activities that go along with it, whether it's concerts, track meets and golf meets and athletic activities, or, this next Sunday's National Honor Society, or in a couple weeks prom, and then graduation activities here as we get into May. I would hate to have that conversation with, a junior or senior that couldn't attend prom in 2 weeks because they've had close contact with somebody with a positive case here at school. We've been very fortunate that our cases of student body members or staff members have been really low over the course of the last 6 weeks. But just last week, we had our first positive case, and we've had an additional 8 students in quarantine because of close contact, not necessarily because of here at school, but because of family members outside of school. And I just don't want to go backwards with that. So, at this time, I think we need to just kind of keep the status quo when it comes to those two things.
Was it ever discussed eliminating the younger grades and going with no mask since they're less likely to get it at all?
Yeah, I think that has been.
Yeah, it has come up in
If
conversation.
we're concerned about, the tracing aspect of it for the high schoolers, I mean, is it necessary for the younger kids to continue to wear the mask then?
Yeah, again, leaning on our healthcare professionals, they just continue to say, for all students and staff members, again, just to try to limit the impact to the students that potentially would have to quarantine or isolate because of that close contact.
So, what was it, back in February, I think, I had reached out to Mr. Jorth and asked him to, I guess, informally poke around at those lower grades to see if the mask requirement that we had put in place was negatively impacting their education. Because at the time, our positivity rate was pretty low, and if that was something we were gonna peel back, that was the last thing we put on. So that was kind of keeping me up at night, like, boy, do we really have to have this if they're really struggling in the classroom? And correct me if I'm wrong here, but the feedback I received was that they've somewhat adapted. And both the students and staff have come to work around it, and it's going okay. Just, based on the memo itself, I'm the first one who doesn't want to be wearing a mask here for sure, and I'd love to peel all of them off. But at this point, I personally am just worried that the juice isn't worth the squeeze with this much time left in school. But with that said, assuming the vaccine distribution goes as planned and nothing crazy happens over the summer, I see no reason why we can't, at some point this summer, lift all the mask requirements in their entirety. But, again, my crystal ball is about as good as everybody else's.
Have there been neighboring districts that have pulled their mask mandates?
So Rock Valley's the only district that has changed their mask requirement. Talked to Sean Kremen at West Lyon, they're planning to keep things status quo. It's
Are
going to be.
they all grades too?
They are 7 through 12 required, and then The elementary kids use them when they can't socially distance, much like ours, so they wear them in the hallways and common areas and stuff like that. Sheldon is K-12, they continued theirs back in their March meeting, they said they were gonna continue theirs through the rest of the school year. Boyden Hall, Rock Valley, Boyden Hall was gonna have a conversation at their April board meeting. They had indicated one way or the other what they're gonna do. Sioux Center was gonna continue with their masking requirement in their K-12 mask environment. And then MOC Floyd Valley hasn't required masks since the start of the entire school year. So they're still just strongly encouraging kids and staff to wear them.
How have their numbers been?
I haven't talked to Russ lately about what their numbers have been.
How effective are kids wearing masks throughout the day? I mean, when you walk into a classroom, are kids wearing a mask or are they not? Because I've heard varying degrees that there's a lot of non-mask wearing going on. So then it's like, well, they're already not wearing a mask and we're not enforcing the policy. What's the point?
Yeah, I think, we could do a better job of enforcement, that's for sure. And that starts with me and the principals reminding staff that students need to be wearing masks frequently. We do hand out, I would guess, anywhere from 50 to 75 masks a day. So there's plenty of students that are sent to the office and kids told that they need to wear their mask. But yeah, it's something that we need to remind kids and remind staff that we need to continue to enforce it.
I'm of the, quite honestly, this is the only place I would wear one. So I feel a little bit different about it just because if I'm making everybody else required to wear one and I don't, then, the second part of it is if we're truly vaccinating and we're truly getting vaccinated, then what's the point of wearing the mask? And I guess that's not for me or us to decide, but I have various degrees of difference on how I feel about the mask wearing. And I think, and I don't want to, we're 6 weeks away, but I don't obviously want to put anybody in jeopardy, but I think we're far enough along now. We've had a pretty low positivity rate and from my experience going out in public and in public places, the mask wearing is pretty non-existent. And there hasn't been a big spike, so I don't know. I would be in favor of at least looking at reducing the, say preschool through 6th grade if we're truly concerned about, activities for the older grades with everything coming up throughout the end of the year. That's my personal perspective. But.
Yeah, speaking directly to the vaccine, our staff members that have elected to get one, those staff members will have their second vaccine by the end of this week. And again, talking to the healthcare professionals, you like to try to give that 2 weeks for kind of the full efficacy. So I think later in the meeting, we're going to talk about a future work session. I think it's something that the board would like to revisit when we get together for that conversation, or even at our May meeting. I think we can revisit it. Does it, just because we say that our plan is to go to the end of the school year, doesn't mean that it has to be either.
Right. The one thing I don't want is for this to be construed as a unilateral decision, like the three of us made the decision. It's not going to happen. If they're, we're a team and we make these decisions together. So if there's an appetite from other board members to make changes now or next week at a special meeting or wait till May, let's certainly get that input so we can have that meeting and put it on new business.
Do you know what
action
the
is required?
Actual numbers of the survey were with teachers that wanted to?
Yeah, it's like 70% would like for it to be done as soon as possible, to 30% kind of split evenly between once everybody's been fully vaccinated and 2 weeks after that, and then, all the way to the end of the school year.
Are we doing anything different with elementary lunch?
Again, it's my recommendation, we're not able to socially distance
Okay.
in that lunchroom if we're, you know, putting all kids back in there, in that lunch
15
block.
minute
It's,
clock, yeah.
yep.
Okay. Anything else on that? Thank you.
Yep,
Anything else on your list, Mr. Jordan?
that's all I've got.
Okay. Item 6, new old business, sorry, there is none, so we'll move on to new business. Item A, consider approval of fiscal year 2021-2022 budget.
As you can see in the packet, we have reviewed everything at our previous meeting and work session, and nothing has changed. So that is the tax rate of 12.93828. This drops around 50 cents from our previous year, with an instructional support income tax rate of 8%, cash reserve levy in the amount of $650,000, a management levy in the amount of $300,000, PEPAL combined levy of $332,508, and a PEARL levy of $42,577. So that is what is there before you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them right now, but again, we kind of went over this in a little bit greater detail previously, so. Again, you're just approving the request to levy. You know, the budget itself is what you work with each month and throughout the year, so. And then on top of that, I am asking for a resolution for the budget adjustment or the budget guarantee as it's referred to, just in case the legislature would do something different. It's not happened in the past, but I always say never's a long time. So we just kind of do it every year, and it doesn't seem to be an issue, and I send that into the department management. And that would be a roll call vote.
So we can take item A here first. There's a motion to approve. Entertain that.
Make a motion to approve the, whatever it says, budget.
Second.
A motion and second to approve next year's fiscal budget. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. And item B, Jackie, you need a roll call vote, is that right?
I do.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion for approval on that. We'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adopt the budget guarantee, budget adjustment resolution for fiscal year 21-22. David Jans,
Aye.
Scott Postma,
Aye.
Andy Koo,
Aye.
Joel DeWitt.
Aye.
And it does pass with 4 aye and 0 nay with Carrie Davis absent. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item C, consider approval of settlement with Central Lyon Education Association.
So Personnel Committee met a couple different times with our CLAA team of negotiators. We reached a tentative agreement on the 1st of April for those 4 items listed. Salary increase of 2.25 at a cost of $96,000. And then it equates to approximately a $1,280 raise per teacher. Also raising the base wages to $34,250. Adding the middle school robotics to the extra duty schedule at 3% of the extra duty base is $25,000. And then no major language changes other than the duration would be for 3 years. So starting this July through June of 2024. And then each year we would reopen if the legislature should appropriate more funding for teacher salaries. So Dave or Scott, you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, pretty straightforward.
Appreciate the negotiations team for their flexibility and again, our positive working relationship. We look to continue that into the future.
If there's no discussion or questions on that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make that a motion.
Second. Motion and second to approve the settlement with CLEA. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item D, consider approval of support staff wages.
So support staff increases at that same percentage, 2.25 for the hourly wages, for a total of approximately $25,000. Again, based upon the individual's experience and years of service, those increases will be at 2.25% for each staff member.
Questions or discussion there? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second to approve the support staff wages. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item E, consider athletic sharing agreement with George Little Rock. So, let's treat this one just a little bit differently. So, Mr. Jorth, I'll have you introduce your summary and recommendations. We'll ask for public input if there's any here, and then if not, we'll step back in and have some more discussion at that point.
Sounds good. Tried to capture what are kind of final offers by both Central Lyons Sharing Committee and George Little Rock Sharing Committee. That's what the bullets in the middle there are about. But really, if you boil it down to kind of the two paragraphs below the bulleted sections there, I just want to kind of give you a summary of the positions of both sides. George Little Rock basically expressed their interest in a one-year agreement to share softball beyond this summer, and to share it at 50% of games and practices between the two schools. And they would remain the host school, and we would compete under the Mustang mascot. And then in the second year of the agreement, 2023, we would go our separate ways. And Central Lyon would play independently, George Little Rock would play independently. And their position was they were not interested in continuing to share softball if they weren't the host school into the future. But they felt like a one-year extension of the sharing agreement would allow both them and us time to transition to playing independently. And our position was that if we were not going to continue to share softball together, regardless of the arrangement of who was the host school in 2022 and 2023, we felt like there was no benefit in extending it in just 1 year. Our two big points were that 75% of the softball players are currently Central Lyon softball players, in addition to the fact that the softball field that we've constructed will be ready for competition this summer and definitely continue to be used next summer. And we can trace that decision all the way back to 2018, when the board began those conversations at the board level before I got here. So if we were not going to continue together, we felt like we just needed to go our separate ways starting as soon as next summer. And we couldn't really come to an agreement on softball, and that's why, what I'm putting forward is my belief that we should approve the sharing agreement for football, cross-country, and wrestling, because we didn't have any issues with those shared activities. And that at this time, we need to start making plans that this summer will be our last year playing softball together, and starting next summer, 2022, both schools would play independently. So, I don't know if you guys got anything else you want to add to that, or?
Is this summer, are we sharing, is it 50/50?
60-40, so
60/40 George, and Little Rock and 40% here?
40% here. Yep.
Before we get there, I want to ask for public input. And I know I don't believe anybody has signed up Is there anybody willing to speak, wanting to speak? Sorry, willing's probably the wrong word. Wanting? No public input, okay. So, I think at this point, Scott, Joel, you guys want to give a report on the sharing committee?
Yeah, you know, we've been talking about this with George for quite some time, kind of like Brent has alluded to. Before I get to that, I'd just like to reiterate a little bit, because I think there's been some inaccuracies that's been reported. We started talking about this whole process of building a softball field in 2018, and we've been upfront with George since the beginning that this was going to be our desire, that once these fields were constructed and ready to play, that we were going to want to host softball. So I just want to put that out there first, and you know, going through the whole sharing agreement, which has been pretty successful throughout the years. We want to continue that relationship with them, but we recognize their need and want to continue to host. So in the best interest of our school and our student athletes, we came to the decision that it's best for us to start on our own starting next year if there's no relationship following that. So, you know, I'd like to thank George and their sharing agreement committee members. Obviously, you know, we've had a lot of discussion over the years, and it's unfortunate that we just can't come to an agreement on this, but, you know, our hope is that this doesn't affect the football, wrestling, and the cross country, that we've continued to have good relationship and successful teams down the line, so.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, we had a series of meetings, so, you know, certainly I'd like to thank George Little Rock's super and the committee members to be able to get together with us and, you know, have some good, honest discussion about where softball's at and yeah, it is what it is at this point. So yeah, I would like to continue with cross country and wrestling and football and thank them for their service for that.
So I think the way we'd like to handle this, and you know, before we vote here, is let's use the amendment process that's outlined by Robert's Rules of Order. So what we'll do is I'll ask for a motion to approve the sharing agreement as listed for football, cross country, and wrestling as recommended. If there's a second, we'll have some additional discussion. It'll give opportunity for folks to offer an amendment that will kind of, the main motion is the trunk of the tree, and then the amendments are used to kind of build that tree, and then eventually we plant it at the end. But I'll give the opportunity for anyone to make a motion for an amendment to add anything they wanted to there. So before we get to that point, is there any other discussion on the sharing agreement? I think there's a lot that's been said, you know, in board minutes and et cetera, not necessarily on our end, but you know, I don't think any of us around this table are interested in airing any dirty laundry around here, so. So with that in mind, if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the sharing agreement, athletic sharing agreement with GLR as recommended for football, cross country, and wrestling.
I make a motion to approve the sharing agreement with George Little Rock for football, cross country, and wrestling for the next 2 years.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. On the main motion, are there any amendments to be offered that other board members would like us to be considered? Generally, if you're going to make a motion like that, you should support it. Doesn't mean you can't vote against it. And then the second would be just to get that motion to a vote. Hearing none, we will go ahead and vote on the main motion. which is approval of the athletic sharing agreement with George Little Rock for the next 2 years for football, cross-country, and wrestling. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, next item is the, considering the expansion of the Siouxland Conference. As my memo states here, Siouxland Conference has a rich tradition and collegial spirit among its current 10 members. In March, athletic directors and superintendents met to discuss the possibility of expansion. At that time, the consensus of school leaders, and it is my belief, that a 10-team conference is the ideal size of a conference. And so it is my recommendation that the board vote no at this time to conference expansion. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. There's no questions there. One thing I would ask for, instead of trying to
Yeah.
vote no on a not, someone can make the motion to just reaffirm our desire to keep the conference at 10 members. That work?
Yep.
Okay. So I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to affirm the conference at 10 members.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to affirm the conference size of a 10-team conference. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item G, consider Meyer Electric quote for materials and labor.
So pages 68 and 69 have the quote as it explains for kind of the administrative offices area, hallways and corridors, high school commons, gymnasium, mezzanine, and then kind of the ag industrial shop area, including just those 2 classrooms for LED upgrades in a total of $48,000. And that work to be scheduled, if approved, after school has concluded on the 21st.
And that item is budgeted as far as our CIP.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Jorth on that or discussion?
Somewhat of a side question or comment, not related to this particular one, but
Yes.
have we ever, and again, it's not appropriate to do it for this one because we're too late in the game, but in the interest of getting our students exposure to this type of work, and so they can understand, is this something that I'd potentially like to do for a career? Have we ever thought about or talked about, hey, Meyer Electric or whomever our subcontractor is, we'd like you to employ at least one of our students in helping you with putting this into place, so that they get an understanding of what does an electrician do, what does a plumber do, what does a bricklayer do, those types of things.
Yeah, we obviously haven't done that on this project, but I can tell you that with our work on the industrial tech house and even the tiny houses before that, Meyer Electric has been a consultant during that process.
And my understanding is they've been very good about working with us on those things in particular.
Yep.
And that's kind of what made me think of this particular one and say, hey, okay, great. Would you be willing to
Yeah.
take on an employee, per se, of one of our students over the summer as they're putting us in place?
Yeah,
Obviously, there has to be interest on the part of some of our students in doing it, but they may not even know it's available or even a possibility unless we make it known through the school. They may or may not be willing to entertain that at this point. I'm not by any means making that a condition of approval of this one by any means, but we may want to think about that down the road at some point at least.
yeah, I know that Meyer Electric employs Central Lyon alumni, and even last summer, we had a 2020 graduate that did work with them with the 1968 building upgrades. So I think there is a good relationship there and an opportunity in the future to look at even more opportunities for our kids.
This includes like the gym lights also?
Yep.
Because I did a nice job in the activity center, brighten that thing up all right.
And the elementary gym.
Also the elementary gym, yeah, that was a dungeony
Yeah.
before.
I think our elementary teachers, the best feedback that I received is the dimmer switches in those classrooms, and the ability to control that.
Actually,
No?
I like the security lights because I'm straight up
Oh.
afraid of the dark. And at night, I can leave without being afraid.
Okay, all right.
I'll be on the switch all the time.
So yeah, they've been welcome upgrades on a lot of different levels.
Very, very appreciative.
Will we have LED and everything now then, or is there any?
There would be some 98 building classrooms that we would still need to finish at a later date.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve Meyer Electric's bid for upgrading.
Second.
We're at that point, I think we're at that point.
For sure. I have a motion and a second to approve the Meyer Electric quote for $48,091.42. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Item H, consider ADA purchasing agreement for food and supplies.
So this is an annual agreement, as it says there, for primarily our food and nutrition program, but then we also do get some kitchen supplies that come from that. That is, essentially, it's bulk purchasing prices, as like a co-op with all the ADAs across the state.
Questions or discussion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the AE purchasing agreement for food and supplies.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the ADA purchasing agreement. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Item I, consider board policy, 3 items there.
So as the memo states, the first 5 policies really are just review. There's some minor language changes in those items. And then there are 4 policies to rescind. Talk specifically about 606.7, the homework policy. Language would remain in the student handbooks as it currently exists. It's just not a policy that's recommended anymore by ISB. Content would, like I said, continue to live on in the student handbook. And then 606, 15, 16, and 43 are duplicate policies that are already included in the 400 series. So it's really, they're redundant here. And then the 606.1 would be class size. Again, this would be a first reading because we currently don't have it as policy. But as it states in the memo, the sole discretion for class size would be just clarified that that's a board level decision with a recommendation coming from myself. And I would recommend that come back for a second reading next month, since it's a new policy to be adopted.
Any questions on those, discussion? It sounds like you're okay with us waiving the second reading of 1 and 2, but bring number 3 back.
Yes.
Entertain a motion for those when you're ready.
So do you want a separate motion for 1 and 2 and then come back with another motion later on number 3?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
Just to avoid any confusion about second
Yeah,
reading.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, that'll be fun. So I'll make the motion to approve the policies listed in 1 and 2, including the rescinding and waive the second reading of those.
Second. Motion and second to approve items 1 and 2 and waive the second reading of those. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item 3. Entertain a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve new policy listed.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of the new policy 606.1, class size / class grouping. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item J, personnel. Let's take 1 and 2 together. Okay.
Yep, resignation from Miss Jackson from our TK position. And then the hiring of Michaela Kramer for kindergarten and Travis Shipper for 7th and 8th grade. Any comments on any of those, Mr. Harmon or Mr. Engelmann?
Very excited for both of them to come. And we'd like to thank Mrs. Jackson for her service this year. She did a nice job. And we'll find a replacement.
Yeah, same thing, very excited to have those folks on board, Travis especially, getting to know him through the interview process, and brings a lot of valuable experiences to the district currently. He's taught 7th through 12th grade social studies at 2 different districts, and yeah, everyone I talked to had great things to say about him. Looking forward to seeing what he can do here at Central Lyon.
Is that a part-time position or full-time?
Full-time,
It is full-time.
yep, so he's stepping in for Bruce,
Oh.
yep.
And then the number 3 there is, did you want me to talk about that one now? or-
I'll take the first 2 first.
Okay, yeah.
How many, are there there'll be 2 sections of TK in the fall?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, we're up to 27. We're asking for TK, so that would mandate a second teacher come back for TK.
If you're ready, I'd entertain a motion to approve the resignation and hirings as listed.
So moved.
Motion and second to approve the resignation and hirings as listed. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item 3, go ahead, Mr. Dorth.
So the final couple pages of the packet have all the teaching staff and the extra duty positions listed for you. That does include Carly Kuvenhoven, I think, Kuvenhoven, who you had approved last month for a Spanish instructor, in addition to Mrs. Kramer and Mr. Shipper that you just approved for the teaching positions.
What are our current staff numbers?
So I think we have 68 individuals for like
63.2?
63.2 FTE.
I was just in teaching and then we have an additional 3.5 at TLC. So I think it ends up being 60, whatever. I have to look at my spreadsheet, but yes. Negotiations was based on 63.2.
It's just certified staff,
Yep,
FTE.
68 individuals, 63
FTE.
full-time equivalents. Yep.
Okay.
So assistant baseball, middle school track, that's happening right now, or is that Bruce's and?
For next year.
Okay.
This would be next year's,
This
correct?
would be next year's, okay,
Yep, so with Bruce's resignation came that open.
gotcha.
And then Mrs. Hakeman resigned.
Right, yeah, last month.
Speech, yep,
Yeah.
and then baseball's just sort of still been open. I believe it was covered by a certain individual over to our left last summer.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I understand.
There's no questions or any additional discussion on those. I'd entertain a motion to approve. Someone,
Second.
motion and second to approve next year's teaching and extra duty contracts. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item 8, announcements. Dates to remember.
Yes, so looking at a future academic achievement work session, and if we wanted to do it between now and our next meeting, kind of looking at either Wednesdays, because we don't have track meets, golf meets and stuff like that. Otherwise, Monday, the 26th, only has a middle school track meet down in Hull. Open to whatever time works best for the group, whether we want to do 7 o'clock like we do our regular meeting, or you wanted to do something a little bit earlier. Open for conversation about those 3 dates or any other dates that are better options for the board.
Since Carrie's not here, I wonder if maybe you could drop an email tomorrow to all of us.
Yep.
Just ping us and list the dates and we can all reply, and whoever can make it, and whoever can't, that's okay too.
Sounds good. Otherwise, I tried to list the big items between now and the end of the school year. As you can see, this Sunday, we've got National Honor Society induction. What's the time for that, Mr.?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. In a little over a week, we'll have our middle school track meet on the 20th. And then, as you can see there, prom on Friday the 23rd. And then I would like to highlight commencement on Sunday the 16th. So that's after our next board meeting, but just so you guys get that on your calendars. And then for everybody in the community that might have questions, God willing, we don't have any April surprises for snow. Friday, May 21st will be our last day of school for kids, and teachers will be back on Monday and Tuesday the following week for professional learning. So,
I would like to add on Wednesday, May 5th, retirement open house. I would like to voluntold Mr. Koob that he's speaking on behalf of the board.
I am
You're being voluntold right now.
voluntold.
And if
If you don't want to, I would.
choose not to, then you may designate another representative to do so.
Wednesday, May 5th?
And you can ask Mr. Jans, it's pretty brief, comment, thank you. And the rest of it is done by staff members. We usually have a person that represents each staff member, and it's a variety. It can be a roast, it can be jovial stories, it can be celebrations, it's a little bit of everything. So it's a good time. Our retirees are very, very thankful for it after the fact, and we always have a good showing. Last year was the first year that we weren't able to do that, and we decided to go forward with it this year because our activities were back in session and everything else, so people will be asked to, we'll separate tables and socially distance as well as we can, so, and sit with their
What time is that?
3:45 to 4:30, 3:30 to 4:30, but at 3:45 will be our start time. And Mr. George would open up that ceremony, and then I have an agenda that I would forward to whoever is going to speak. And like I said, usually about 45 minutes, and then people mingle a little bit and move on, because we do have, obviously, practices, and it's church night and family night as well as a fine arts concert, so. Maybe it's not church and family night because of the fine arts concert.
I think our majority of our churches are done at the end of April for our
Okay.
Wednesday night church for youth groups and stuff.
So let me know if that will work for you, otherwise it sounds like you have another volunteer, so, and both of you could, actually, it really doesn't bother me at all, the more the merrier.
We'll get our PowerPoints ready.
Okay, let's keep it short.
One slide. Thanks for that addition, Jack.
Yes, thank you. It just kind of keeps popping up in my calendar.
Okay, I think that's it. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion second to adjourn, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Mr. Koob, I'm gonna hand you these, and you may have to hand some of them on to Mr. George after you're done. They should be all marked, but.
Thanks for coming.
Yep. We just are starting the 1500.
Right now.
It looks worse
Still
than
not
it is,
warm.
but it's just a big old credit card bill.
My daughter says, well, we'll be done by 8 out there, so, no, you won't. You might be done by 9.
You don't want.
It's a lot less windy in here.
I'm still cold. Hey, That stresses me out. I tried to take the punch one time.
There are a few things that you need to
I was gonna reach
but I think that's one.
No, here, that stresses me out. I can't do it. I'll handle that otherwise.